Thanks for making the time. Today's webinar is the key ingredients to best-in-class franchise. As a franchise business grows, it becomes increasingly important to have a streamlined and efficient solution for managing your data. And that's for financial and operational reporting, planning, and the various analysis that are important in a growing organization. Today, over the next about 55 minutes that we have your attention, we're going to be exploring some of the challenges within the franchise industry, not only in 2024 and beyond. We'll cover some best practices around financial reporting, KPIs, and benchmarking. We'll get a sneak peek into one of the solutions that Citrin Cooperman has recently launched specifically for the franchisors and franchisees. And we're also going to be welcomed by a member of a multi-brand franchisor that is utilizing part of that new solution, and we'll cover the part that they're looking at incorporating in phase 2. So again, thank you for making the time for the webinar today. So first I'll introduce myself, and then I'll call out the different members of the panel to introduce themselves. I'm Dominic DiBernardo. I'm a partner here at Citrin Cooperman, joined the firm about 2.5 years ago. I run the corporate performance management practice that essentially implements one of the tools that we're going to be talking about a little bit today with our guest of honor and some of the implementation team that worked with our guest. So I'll play the role of the moderator here, and the next person I'd like to introduce is Michael Iannuzzi. If you can give your intro, please.
Sure. Thank you, Dom, and thank you everybody for joining and participating on the panel, and thank you to our speakers. I'm Michael Iannuzzi. I am a partner here at Citrin Cooperman and Company. I co-run our franchise accounting and consulting practice along with my partner, Aaron Chaitowski. We have a very nice team of people that work with franchisors and multi-unit franchisees. We do all the financial statement audit work for the franchisors for those FDDs, tax prep, planning, consulting, and a host of other advisory services like what we're going to talk about today a little bit, buy-side, sell-side due diligence, valuations, and just general franchise consulting. And, thank you all for your support.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. And I'd like to go over to Mike, our guest of honor, who's joining us from Homefront Brands. Would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Dom. And hello, I'm Mike Dudan, Chief Financial Officer for Homefront Brands. I'm a native Chicagoan, grew up in Schaumburg, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. My older brother went down to or came down to Appalachian State to play football, and his name will come up again later, but that kind of drew me down to the mountains. I loved it. Attended Appalachian, graduated there with an accounting focus. Came out of there and worked with Arthur Andersen for about 7 years, and was at Arthur Andersen when they pulled the plug on us. My oldest, my daughter, was actually born on the same day that our Charlotte office closed. So that was a long day to get computers handed in and welcome our baby and all that. I did land with Deloitte after that. I had a running client between both firms that was the Carolina Panthers. And I had decided after my daughter was born that I may not want to travel so much. And kind of the Panthers had an opening at just the right time. It was kind of just really good timing. And so I left public accounting, started as a Panthers controller. I ended up being there 16 years, and finished the last several years as chief financial officer of the Panthers. I was the CFO there for the sale from the Richardson family to Dave Tepper, which at the time was the largest sports transaction ever, at approximately $2.3 billion. And lately that's getting blown out of the water by some of the recent ones. It's crazy. So I was there again until 2019. In 2019, my brother Jeff sold his franchise AdvantaClean that he had built to around 250 locations nationwide, and that was sold to Home Franchise Concepts, which is like a home services platform of franchise brands. So we decided to work together and kind of rebuild exactly that. And that has now become Homefront Brands. And just a little bit about Homefront here. We are a leading national franchise platform consisting of a family of several home and property service brands. We have some different type brands. We have a temporary wall systems, which is a B2B concept for containment, construction containment wall systems, temporary. And we have a Top Rail Fence, which obviously is a fencing franchise. We have Yard Patrol Pros, which is treatment for lawn care and also mosquitoes. We have Window Hero, which is window cleaning, gutters, pressure washing, that sort of thing. And then we have the Designery, which is kitchen and bath remodeling and all franchises that we are currently operating. And we really pride ourselves on providing franchise owners with the support and training that they need to meet their personal goals and really to make a lasting transformational impact in the communities they serve. We do like to say that we help owners start well so they can go well. And to date, we have almost 500 franchise territories sold, of which about 340 are currently open and operating. So that's the growth over really a couple years here. So we are we're on a high trajectory growth path, and again, just looking forward to participating in this panel today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike, for not only the career background, but also the background on Homefront Brands. It's going to be exciting to kind of put that front and center in terms of your experience with the solution we're going to talk about and some of the things it's enabling you and the organization to do to handle all that growth across all those brands that you just mentioned. The next person I'd like to introduce on our side is going to be Chris McCarthy. He's actually another partner here that worked with Mike. So Chris, go ahead and give yourself an introduction, please.
Yeah, I'm Chris McCarthy. Like Dom mentioned, I'm another partner at the firm. I went to school for accounting at Cal Poly here on the West Coast in California, up in San Luis Obispo. And when I went into work, it was in the corporate finance side. So extensive corporate finance background before I started implementing a solution here called Vena. And actually, I worked closely with Mike on his implementation, but been on the implementation side for about coming up on 3 years now, along several verticals, but in addition to franchising and franchisors.
Thank you. And Brendan Suggett.
Awesome. Thank you, Dom. Hi, everybody. My name is Brendan Suggett. I'm also a partner here at Citrin Cooperman, specializing in Vena implementations. My career started out at Deloitte as an auditor, and then moved on to the private industry from there with a handful of accounting and various FP&A roles where I spent most of my career using tools like Vena. And now I get to help companies set Vena up, learn all about them, real exciting. And we've designed some really cool stuff I'm excited to show you later today, specifically for the franchise industry. So I'll leave it at that and let things keep going and show you guys that in a little bit.
Awesome. And then last but not least, Mike from Vena.
Thanks, Tom. And I take the position of the third Mike on the panel. So my name is Mike Zepka, Director of Solution Consulting. I've actually worked with Vena for about 12 years at this point. I implemented a lot of our early customers, one of which happens to be McDonald's Canada. And so really for today, I'm here to support the team. I worked with them to deploy the franchising solution. And so happy to provide that support, answer additional questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And we're going to go ahead and jump into today's session. So the first question I'd like to actually direct towards to Mike Dudan at Homefront Brands, and that's what motivated Homefront Brands to implement CPM software, particularly Vena in this case.
Well, probably a few things to mention here. We were prior to Vena last year, our budgeting was in Google Sheets and shared Google Sheets, and it was not cutting it, to say the least. By the time everybody around the building had to provide input, We really needed a budgeting and forecasting tool that we felt would be efficient and be dynamic. And we'll talk, I know, on some of the questions coming up around how dynamic Vena really is for accessing information. And then once we got into the demo and we met Chris and his partner Rob, you know, we've worked with those guys since day one. So I thought that was great that we got to keep the people that really knew the whole story about what we were trying to do. And honestly, I thought it was a relatively low cost implementation for the value that we thought we would get out of it. So again, we did the demo and we knew it could apply to the way that we are set up. So we are, you know, our staff is really in a not necessarily a consolidated group that owns the franchise brands. We're really kind of off to the side, and we have service agreements with each of the brands. And then the brands sit under a platform, and there needs to be cost allocations made from our employment company over to the brands. There are no employees at the brands. And there's other costs rolling through as well. And you know, when you're doing a platform, a big reason why is because you can spread cost. You know, it's going to cost you a lot less to be in a platform like we have in a franchisor situation, because it's shared resources. So you're splitting cost, and we think that for us, that has been a very efficient way to run it. And the way that Vena worked with being able, again, to be so dynamic on involving all these entities, by the time we were done, we had 8 entities that we really were focused on. And, you know, that included brands and other companies that were in the mix. And really the way the workflows run, to me, it allows for a lot of collaboration in the planning process. So stakeholders actively participate in developments of the budgets that they'll manage. The workflows will, you know, notify you with an email when you have a task. You know, there are tasks for inputting, tasks for reviewing, tasks for approving, but all along the way, when there's something you have to do, you get an email. And I thought that was great. And then we also liked the way that the users interacted with the spreadsheets and templates to input their information. So Vena really is rooted in Excel. So those that like to work with Excel and spreadsheets, it is deeper than that, but you have definitely some familiarity with formulas and ways that you can you know, lay out your data to get the right outputs that you're looking for. And the users who may or may not like spreadsheets, we are able to set up all the templates and really only give them access to the input fields that they need to fill in. So we kept our control over formulas and how things consolidated and which information was being collected. And then, you know, once the users get in and do a couple of the templates, they're used to it, and it really ended up working out pretty well. And then also, I thought that the reporting process allows everybody to get their reports in a way that they want to look at it. You know, they pretty much can self-access. They can go in, and again, they are limited to what you want them to see. So if they're a certain department, they would only see that department. If they have multiple departments, there'll be a little choose box, and they can do a pull down and switch departments. And so say they pull open a budget versus actual report, they can look at any year, any period, any, you know, if they have multiple departments, they can access, but all that is done through pull down menus. And then Vena cranks out the report with the new information on it. So, you know, it was all of that, again, with what I thought of a relatively reasonable and low cost.
So if I was to summarize for the audience before I ask Chris a follow-up question, it sounds like you had a need to create workflow around processes that were repeatable and scalable. I heard in your intro about multiple brands, multiple entities. So being able to wrangle the data together to get the visibility you need, so that way the various stakeholders in the organization could essentially understand the levers they have to pull in their business. It sounds like you were also dealing with cumbersome and manual work to working in Google Sheets to kind of get this reporting out. I'm curious, does with the multi-entity and the multi-brand structure, was there challenges around, were they coming from different source systems that you had to marry together? And maybe Chris, from an implementation standpoint, you can kind of touch on that. And then, Mike, you can add anything that he might have missed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Mike's situation was a little bit unique because, again, being a newer business, most of these, like most newer businesses, kind of typically started something like QuickBooks. So in Mike's particular instance, those 8 different entities were all separate QuickBooks entities. So what we had to, the challenge in front of us was, how do we actually marry all those entities together into a unified chart of accounts? And not to mention, Mike's in the process of undergoing a migration over to Dynamics. So how do we also build this in a way where it's an easy flip of the switch once that migration happens to essentially, evacuate the QuickBooks connections and plug directly into Dynamics without disrupting his current planning and reporting processes. So we did that, we architected that appropriately in Vena. We have, kind of this, a lookup within Vena. So when we are, connecting directly into all these source systems, it's running through and sending it to a unified global chart of accounts. So if Mike wants to be able to view the business by franchise or by, a combination of brands or on a consolidated level, it's very easy to do so because that hierarchy will do the aggregation for him, as long as we have that set up correctly.
Yeah, that's been really, really helpful because I can run, a consolidated look, which just takes everything, all the brands together. And then we also had another one that we called all entities, which was the brands plus, our entity that we are employed by, and another entity that's in there. But the ability, again, to just do a pull down, I want to look at this specific company, or I want to look at this group of companies, and Vena takes 5-6 seconds to think about it all, and then pops it up. So it's really improved our reporting capabilities.
And Mike, how else would you say it's putting a solution in place like this has helped transform how you spend your day or how your team spends their time? In terms from a value perspective, because there's some things that technology is really good at automating, but if a human's doing it, you're losing that human capital to do other higher and best use activities for the organization. So what has it enabled you to do since implementing Vena?
Well, we took a bit of a leap of faith with Vena. Again, we liked what we saw in the demo and in our training, but we also wanted a lot of customization. We really wanted this to be a best-in-class application, and still believe it will be. We have a huge wish list of things we still want to do, but it certainly has allowed us to speed the reporting process out, speed I don't know if it necessarily speeds the budget process, but I think we'll get into that, or I can get into that now. But it really did transform a lot of what we did. So what we wanted is to have bottom-up planning that we built off of inputs and assumptions. So not just what's our sales dollars, but for our revenue items, it's all based off interrelated assumptions on sales funnels, conversion rates, ad spend. We would put in assumptions. What is our ad spend going to be? Okay, now off that ad spend, what is our cost per lead? So if you know those two numbers, then you know how many leads you're working with. And then we built all the templates in Vena have all of that. And then it's like, once somebody is a lead, what percentage of those leads can we convert to coming out to meet us, and then what percentage of the people that come to visit buy a franchise from us. So, you know, if you miss on a number, it's not just missing on a number. You then dig down and see what all the assumptions are behind it, and you know that can really inform where you need to spend your time to improve the dollars, and also provides an easy way to reforecast with new assumptions going forward. So all those assumptions you can change month to month for the rest of the year, however you want to do it. If you want to, you know, rebudget every month, rebudget every quarter, it's simple. And, you know, the other part of it is we have assumptions around how long does it take a franchisee to be open for business after they buy. So the templates literally are saying from ad spend down, here's how many franchises we expect to sell. And then it's saying, and we expect, you know, different brands take different amounts of time to open. The designery needs a storefront, so you have to figure in time to find a place, get a lease, do the build out. Whereas some of the other ones, they just need a van and some training, you know, so those are more like 60 days. So what Vena does is it says, okay, here's what they expect to sell. Here's how long it takes them to get open. And then it also builds in, what do we think a new franchisee's first 12 months look like? And we applied seasonality to that. Some of our brands definitely depend on season, weather. And when you do all that, the end of the road is, you know, system-wide sales. So we have system-wide sales by franchisee, which then feeds into another area, which uses our, you know, our different rates, royalty rates, you know, different streams of fees, I guess, that it then automatically does that too. So by putting in all the assumptions, you really get a very complete look, and again, ability to look back when you miss your numbers. So with all that said, we're really just currently using it in budgeting and reporting, variances, things like that. But we are constantly thinking of ways to use Vena. We have a wish list of things that we will whittle down with Chris and team. But you know, across the building, people have a real good sense that when they go to Vena, it's a reliable source, and they can, you know, determine what's going on with their numbers rather than just see that there's a variance.
Great, yeah, and you know, so you got a single source of truth. You've got a streamlined way of disseminating information across the organization, using technology for automating that and giving you a holistic view across the organization. It sounds like, you know, maybe you haven't, you know, gotten increased or sped up cycle times, but you've got a better bottoms up approach to building the plan, and you've got the drivers that, you know, trickle through the model. Is there any blind spots that Vena has helped you uncover that maybe you just didn't have the time or the data available to manage the business in terms of, you know, you guys it sounds like you're growing fast. In a fast-growing organization, sometimes it's hard to keep control of cost to make sure that, you know, you're looking after the bottom line. Anything like that has opened up, or you see opening up on the horizon?
Well, I'd say the one thing is that it really improved our forecasting and ability to help our franchisees. You know, as what we used to build out the sales forecast for each of our franchisees were business plans. So we have our annual homecoming, we call it. Our annual summit is in November. And this past November, we had all of the franchisees bring their business plan for 2024. And there were group sessions, there were one-on-one sessions. And so our plan is not just we have this many franchisees, and on average, they're going to get this many dollars. it is a forecast for every single location. And, now it's something where, with adding more technology on the back end side, you can take the actuals versus that information. You can really zero in on who's falling off plan very quickly, and address it, because that is part of what we try to do for people, is get in and help them as soon as we see an opportunity.
And before we transition to Brendan, he's going to show us a little bit of some of the things that you may be contemplating in the next phase. Is there anything that you would do differently in terms of looking back? You've spent the better part of the last 6 or 7 months kind of putting the solution in place, kicking the tires, getting the reporting in place, the workflows. You've worked through consolidating to a single chart of accounts. Sounds like you're close to this migration to MS Dynamics from 8 different instances of QuickBooks. Looking back, is there anything you would change or anything you would do differently? Any kind of advice or tips you'd give to anyone else considering to do something similar?
Well, for us, there's a few things. First of all, we'll start earlier. We started in early November, and really, well, it was new, but we'll still start earlier. But just with the holidays and year ends and just general busyness, we really had a push. To get there. Obviously next year we'll have the templates the way we want them, so the process will be sped up. And then honestly, the way that the workflows turned out for us, I will probably want to do the revenue planning first. So what we did this year is everything started kind of at the same time, but really revenue planning is where we determine, our franchise sales, how many open units we expect to have in what month. And a lot of the expense planning is really based on that. Labor is affected. How many people do you need to support the franchises and, handle the leads that come in for, our franchise development? Operating expenses are in many cases largely determined by how many locations you have. It's a cost per location, and you can put drivers in there, and you can have that template for operating expenses fed to put open locations across the top. And then within that, people can use a driver and say, I want to budget $150 for this expense for every open location, and it will automatically put those expenses in the budget based on the plan for how many you'll have open. And it just informs us, on what we'll need to do and when we need to do it to be ready ahead of time to support the network the way that we need to. So that was, and then the only other thing I would say is we didn't do enough planning on our dashboarding, that, our executive dashboards, or, really the report that people are getting currently is budget versus actual, and we're kicking them out some other information in different ways. But the big build now is on, sending the right information from this to the right people and in the right way, so that they can really have a dashboard look at it. And maybe that's in Power BI, or maybe Power BI feeds Vena. We're not quite decided on that yet, but that is one of our front burner items is everybody's dashboards.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, to summarize as we transition, that you've got the foundation in place. You've got the infrastructure to support automated reporting and automated dissemination. You've been able to transition from being, reactive to proactive due to the forward-looking nature of the ability to do more forecasting from a bottoms up across the organization. And now you're in a position to start thinking about what are the important KPIs that I need to expose across, the organization through these dashboards to make sure that, management knows, when do I need to intervene, or when do I just want to know that things are, moving, swimmingly. And the great thing, it sounds like, is you have a flexible tool that's going to grow as you continue to grow and iterate on what you need as an organization. And so with that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to transition over to Brendan, because he may be able to show us some of the things that you guys are contemplating, in terms of that continued evolution in the solution as you evolve, kind of the organization. So Brendan, I'd like to pass it over to you.
Absolutely, thank you, Dom. Yeah, so let me share my screen and I'll walk you guys through some ideas we've thrown by Mike to really expand him for his next phase. And I also want to make sure I highlight some items that he's talked about as well, just so you can see what happens. So I've created a truncated version of a workflow here, just with some of the items we're going to show you today. But I want to show you, a workflow and what it could look like. And Mike could manage how this workflow manages the order things happen, who's notified. So as each person, you can assign an owner to this. I'm an owner on each one of this. And so whenever it gets to the next step, emails automatically go out to manage this process. And that's one of the things Mike mentioned earlier that he really liked. Or if I dive down into this yellow one, I get a subset of workflows for all my different departments, and they can have their sub steps on what they need to do and review steps and if it's approved or rejected. So it's a really robust system that's really easy to build and drag and drop, very GUI interface. I just wanted to highlight this is kind of the engine that manages your process for you. But I'm going to jump back now to this specific demo. And so I'm just going to talk through some location level reporting. So one of the items we talked with Mike is if we can get all his franchisees' financial data in here, we can do financial or franchisee reporting and actually send that out to them so they can say, here's how you compare against your peers. Here's how you compare against averages on groups that you're in and things like that. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of these reports that we've pre-built reports we can easily get up and running for any company. And you can also take these and customize them a lot too if there's specific ways and views that you want to see them. It's a great way to get data that you can then surface later. So to kick off this process, the first thing I would do is press this play button. And if I'm not going to press it just yet. I'm going to go to my tasks view, and you notice I don't have any tasks to do. This is where your end user interacts with what's available. As soon as I press play and come back and refresh, I now have a couple of tasks to do. I have some location attribute maintenance, which is this first step in the process. I also have in my view only a report and income statement location or by reporting location. So I'm going to open up this report just to show you what it looks like before we do some of that other items. So let me scroll over and view file. So this file pops up. I'm going to open it, and initially opens in Excel. And it'll ask you, what do you want to see? So in this case, I'm going to look at all my stores within San Francisco. If I click this drop down, and this is an area Mike liked earlier where you can see, hey, I can see my San Francisco rollup, my California rollup, my all locations. But it allows you to see different views. So if I click San Francisco and OK, I've got a blank template that doesn't have any data in it, but it pulls all this data from the cloud, from the Vena cloud into this file. And you'll see a bunch more columns in just a moment here that's going to expand and show all these items. So what it's going to show is all my locations side by side, full P&L down the page. And this can happen. I can also make period or year selection on here as well. My internet connection is going a little slow. I'm sorry, guys. There we go. So now I've got all my different locations going across the page. So you can do your benchmarking and see, great, how's my revenue compared to, if I'm this store, how's my revenue compared against everyone else? How do my costs compare against everyone else? And you kind of benchmark yourself. If you don't want this availability to all your franchisees, that's okay. You can lock it down and only see them against averages. And I'll walk through what those averages look like in just a minute. So let me go back to here. I'm going to go back to my to-dos. And my next step is to location attribute maintenance. So what I'm going to do in this step, and let me open it up, is to actually open up all my locations. Remove our faces from the Zoom picture. All right, so this is going to show me all my different locations, and I can flag them different attribute groups that I want to do reporting on. So I'm going to open this up for all locations, and I've got grouping set up in cohorts. So hey, in this year, how old have they been open? And there's a drop down here. I can assign them stores. If you have other ways you want to report them, like whether they have a drive-through or don't have a drive-through, or geographically where they're located, so you can split some things up in different states. We can add all sorts of columns here to do as many different attributes as you'd like to do locations. And then we're going to throw these attributes in certain groups and come up with the group averages. So once I assign my locations correctly, all I would have to do is press save data and then close the file. After I close the file, I'm going to go back to Vena, and I'm just going to say submit this task as complete. As soon as I submit this task, it's going to push the next step in the workflow. So I'm going to do that right now. Submit task. The next step within the task or the workflow is this year-specific average grouping. This is a purple one because it actually happens on the Vena server. We built a template that a human never has to touch. It just does some calculations in the background. I'm going to open up this file. I actually already have it open just to show you what those calculations look like. But basically, I've got my different group averages. Here's my, in this year, less than 1 year, and this year, my 1 to 2 years, and it just expands on all the locations there with every GL going across the page. And it takes these items and it just calculates an average here. We're just using Excel formulas, and we're going to save this average that spits out here for this group. So later I can call back in this group, hey, I want to do reporting based on this average. And now this data is all available in the Vena Cloud for reporting and other reports, and can even be sent other places like Power BI if you want to do dashboard reporting on it. So, and as I mentioned, nothing to do here. The system does this on the back end. I just have it here so you can see what happens. Then my next step would be, I have some other tasks here, but I have this blue report step, and I'm going to show you in this blue report. If I refresh here and go back to my view only, now I've got, this location attribute maintenance. This is something I've already done. I've got my income statement by location reporting. This is what I showed you to start. I've also got this income statement by group average reporting. So if I take a look at this, I have a couple reports. I've added the location income statement or income statement by location in case you want to see it, but this income statement group averages, if I view this file, I'm going to open it up. And it's going to ask me, okay, what do I want to see? And I want to see my 2021 open length, so I can see my different cohorts from how long they were open in that year. But again, if you have different attributes like geographies, these could show all your different geographical averages, saying, here's, so I can see here's my average for first-year stores, here's my average for second-year stores, here's my average for third-year stores. So that data that was calculated in the other report can now come here. And as I mentioned, this is what we have ready to go up and running pretty quickly, but you can easily customize. So you can pull, if I go back here, I want to choose a different store. Let's say I chose the dog patch store. I could choose that store compared to its peers, and I could also compare that to its group average on which cohort grouping it is. So there's all sorts of different ways and views that you can do this. You can even do comparison analysis. I have another variance analysis here that I'm going to show you. This one is just an expense variance forecast to actuals, but you could easily do this with a location versus its group average. So on this one, if I click choose, I'm going to go ahead and choose all entities. Similar to what Mike said, I could choose any roll-up of entities I want. And when I do this, it's going to populate all the data for me. Here I've got my actuals in this column. I've got my forecasts. I've got my variances in dollars, and with some graphics here, I've got my variances percent. You've got the same thing repeated for quarter to date and year to date. This one also has some other neat features as well, where if I want to, I can set up some different charts and graphs. Anything that's capable in Excel, I can set up any sort of Excel graphs or charts to help add visualizations. Additionally, a couple things I want to talk about too is all this data that we save back is not only available in the cloud, but Vena also has what's called Vena Insights, which is Power BI built into Vena as a user role. And you can build Power BI dashboards in there for all your reporting. Or if you already have Power BI set up, we can flow all this data that's within Vena and all the data that we calculate from Vena over to your Power BI dashboarding, so you can provide quick reports for executives and for your location members. So I'll stop there and see if Mike, if there's anything else you want to add, or Dominic, if you have any questions that you want me to go over, anything else you want me to showcase.
I'd love to hear from Mike in terms of, based on what Brendan shared on the screen here, what kind of plans do you have in terms of what are the KPIs that you want to expose to the leadership that you were mentioning earlier, that you didn't spend a lot of time on the dashboards. So maybe we can start there in terms of what your thoughts are on call it leveling up again once now that you got the foundational phase under your belt in terms of kind of getting more value and getting that visibility to the right people.
It really depends on the person. So so my brother Jeff is our CEO founder. And what he will most likely need on his dashboard is like a cash runway, summary of our cash, our debt, things like that. For operations people, they may want more, what's our days to open when we sell a franchise in the different brands? How long does it take before we start generating, revenue for the franchisee and royalties and things like that for us? So there's literally no limit. We do really want to get into peer groups. So, with us, a lot of the territories really are the same. We kind of base it on number of households. So a lot of the territory sizes as far as volume are very similar. But there could be definitely some peer groups around location in the country, or somebody that has 2 vans versus 1 van, or any other number of things that may distinguish one franchise owner from another. You can, put a peer group around that, and you can give them reporting. Here's how you are, versus the whole network, and here's how you are versus just your peer group that he has these sort of key identifiers that would put you in that group. So those are just seeing the way he's got it, and being able to. Right now, we don't have the franchisee information in Vena. It's not feeding into Vena, only our franchisor information. We have our franchisee information feeding into a data lake that Vena can access, and that's a link we're going to want to make. But yeah, it's all a matter of where you want to manipulate and show your data. Some people are more comfortable with doing that sort of thing in a Power BI. But Vena has some really nice ways. If you can design it in Excel, Vena can do it. So.
Yeah, and to double click on that, bringing that franchisee information, one of the things I heard from the org was being able to automatically generate, Mike was talking about planning royalty revenue or royalty, but being able to actually automate and bring in the sales components from all those franchisees, and being able to automatically generate the invoices that could, be pulled again directly out of Vena. And the nice thing too is it doesn't cost anything additional to add this additional functionality. The only times additional cost would come into play is if you had more users that you wanted on the platform. So if you wanted those franchisees to have Vena licenses, then they pay for the additional licenses. But to continue to build and add functionality and add different modules doesn't cost anything extra. So, again, I don't know if I mentioned it on my intro, but prior to being an implementer, I was a Vena client for 2 years. And for me, that was a major selling point, is you could kind of find ways to stretch the technology throughout the org and make not only the life of the Office of Finance easier, but other components of the organization as well, with no added cost.
Yeah, and I would kind of just close the loop here and say, anytime you have data, people, and process that you have to marry together, Vena tends to be a really good solution to drive streamlined processes that are repeatable and scalable as you grow. We've implemented across a number of organizations, ranging from as small as 20 million to as large as multi-billion-dollar organizations. So it's highly scalable. You've heard us mention Excel a few times, but really what it is it's Excel augmented, so you get the best of what you like about Excel, but it turns Excel into an enterprise level FP&A solution that gives you the control and security that you would expect of such a solution. But you still have that flexibility to adapt the solution to the way you think and the way your business operates, versus you adapting your business to a software application. So I really want to say thank you to the panelists here, and then I think this is a good opportunity for us to maybe let Michael Iannuzzi and Mike Dudan kind of let us know, is there any other resources or organizations that the audience can look to when you're thinking about trends in franchising, tools that can help make their lives better, communities to kind of share battle wounds and battle wins with.
Sorry, want me to kick that off? And
Sure.
again, thank you everybody for participating. So I've been in the franchise world for close to 17, 18 years now. I've been at the firm for 20 years. The International Franchise Association, the IFA, is one of the major organizations out there that protects, promote and enhance the franchise model and the franchise community. That's actually how I met Mike's brother, Jeff. We were on a shared panel together at last year's convention, and we stayed in touch and hooked up after that. Lots of education and networking going on at the IFA. There's also lots of other organizations. There's the Franchise Times and their conferences, the multi-unit conference. There's Young Conference, Legal Symposium, Springboard. So lots of ways to get involved. I'm not saying you have to go to all of them, but if you're really looking to take your brand to the next level, or if you're a supplier that wants to really be educated, these organizations are top of the line, and that's where all the people are. And I credit a lot of what I've learned over the last decade or so to being and attending, lots of these events and hearing the speakers and sharing stories and just being educated by others that have been through it before me.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mike Dudan, do you have any anything to add to that?
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, the IFA has great resources. They have workshops, conventions, the multi-unit convention that just happened. They have a certified franchise executives course where you can learn just as much as you ever wanted to about franchising. And then the professional network groups, the entrepreneurs organization, the YPO, some great things you can go out and join that really do have at least some franchise specific information. I would also just say that in what has really helped us too is, again, to partner with accountants such as Citrin Cooperman and legal advice that has extensive franchising business model experience and deep advisory experience. It's such a unique industry that really people that have been there and done that and seen it really can be very helpful, obviously, as you're looking to either start or grow or whatever you're looking for. And if you're a multi-unit franchisee, ask the franchisor to work with you on, adjusting your technology and your tools to help you run a multi-unit business. Some of those models really have some things that are helpful. And if you're a franchisor, to us, triple down on technology and AI right now. Anything that improves the user experience for a franchisee and provides access to exclusive advice, internal owners forums or tools, anything like that would really be a good resource for your network.
Great. I got one question for Brendan on the attribute management. Are you able to add attributes to help automate same store sales?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of the idea behind the cohort that we did is, first year wouldn't be same year sales. It wouldn't have year-over-year comparison. But we actually just did one recently where they had their cutoff at 18 months. They didn't want to report anything less than 18 months for same store sales, and we absolutely do that and can do that. Yeah.
Okay. Another question that came in is what's the difference? And I think Mike, you kind of touched on this. But what's the difference between an in-house vendor services versus maybe a third party? I think you touched on the value that you've personally gotten working with a third party that has a lot of the industry expertise and the business model expertise to come to the table in terms of as table stakes with assumed knowledge to act as both kind of an implementation partner and a management consultant, depending on what the service is that you're looking at. But is there anything that you would say differently, not to put words in your mouth in terms of the importance of finding the right partner, whether you're implementing a solution or you're looking at some other area of the business?
Yeah, I would just say again, if we're talking franchise specific, working with people that have been there and that really have the deep knowledge. In addition to that, when we're talking about Vena, Citrin Cooperman has championed this product, right? They've developed a deep, talented bunch of people that assist in every step. There was always solutions and suggestions every time we ran into something that, may have been a little confusing to us. There was great advice, and kind of, again, I've been there, done that. Here's how we can do it, or here's your options on how we can do it. There wasn't anything that was just a dead end that somebody, nobody ever said we can't. And they understand the pressure that we're under. We're spending company money, and we need to show the value of the investment. So everything can work great, but if what you turn out to your users and the reports that you show at the end don't look great, then it takes a little bit away from how people feel about it. So that's one thing that, again, I'm specifically working with this team. They were always, just really responsive to anything that we had any heartburn over.
Great. Well, thank you. And we're right here towards the top of the hour. And so I'd like to go ahead and conclude the webinar. Thank you all for taking the time to listen. It was recorded, so we'll also send this out to folks that might have missed it or showed up a little late. Do feel free to reach out with any questions you might have, and if you did express interest in learning about one of the case studies we have, we'll make sure that we get in contact with you as well. But have a great rest of your week and a happy early weekend. I know we got one more day, but thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.